And it is just an absolute lie when these kids are told what they're doing it does not have long-term effects or that it doesn't have long-term consequences. Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're returning, welcome back. Make sure you are also subscribed. On my channel, I like to give my opinion and perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. I do like to talk about current events and politics, so please like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share it with others. Also, again, be sure you are subscribed. Help me to grow this channel and hopefully reach more people that value logic, reason, and sanity. Also, be sure to head on over to Rumble and find me under Outspoken Samantha there in the event that YouTube decides I have violated their community standards and chooses to kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. So as we continue to explore this topic of transgenderism and gender identity and this stuff that is being pushed into schools and classrooms and into our kids' lives at, it seems like every turn. In cartoons, it's in their movies, it's in their books, it's in their entertainment, their toys, and it just seems to be everywhere. So that is why I continue to talk about this thing that is going on, because you can't seem to really escape it. And a lot of the people that prefer that we not talk about it, we being those of us that are more on the conservative side or who have concerns about the effects of this ideology being so widespread and so infiltrated into pretty much every aspect of our lives, they would prefer that we didn't talk about these things. So that's even more reason to be vocal about it. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the more that I look into this topic and people that have the same concerns that I do look into this topic, the more that we find confirmation that our concerns are valid. The things that we are saying are true, that there are so many kids being pushed down this path needlessly, that are being misdiagnosed with being transgender, that are making decisions at a young age that they aren't capable of understanding and living with the long-term consequences of these decisions and trying to piece their life back together, knowing that this pain could have been prevented. So I wanted to go through and read a few stories that I found on Reddit. There's a large community on Reddit and multiple social media platforms that detransitioners supporting other detransitioners and helping each other kind of piece their lives back together and figure out how to move forward and still be happy, knowing that this was a mistake in their life. Let's get into a few of their stories, and I'm hoping that as we continue to talk about these stories and bring more attention to them in a loving and compassionate way, we can continue to spread the message that our concerns come from a place of love. They come from a place of wanting kids to make sure that the decisions they're making about their bodies are things that they can live with for the rest of their lives, coming from a place of being an older adult with more experience and more maturity and understanding that as a teenager, you are just not capable of grasping long-term consequences, of grasping permanency, or grasping the idea that, how you feel about yourself when you're 15 is not going to be how you feel about yourself when you're 30, when you're 50, when you're 70, that your life changes so much that it's so important not to make life-altering decisions at a time when you cannot grasp that time frame. This first one says, I realized last night that I wasn't trans. It wasn't internalized misogyny, but more so the fear of being perceived as a woman, knowing how they are treated. It's funny, right before I had the epiphany that I thought I was trans was the peak of my obsession with feminism and learning about how deeply rooted hatred towards women is in our society. I'm guessing concluding I was trans was a flight response to not wanting to face misogyny. It was even worse because I was 17 and going to college soon as a comp sci major, and just the thought of being a woman in a male-dominated field already mentally exhausted me. I'm 19 now. Realizing I wasn't trans was completely out of the blue too. I was actually going to schedule my top surgery the day I realized, but the coordinator was on vacation. Thankfully, the only irreversible change was some bottom growth. I am 4 months on T and won't be taking any more shots, obviously. I'll miss having no periods though. Hating them was another reason I thought I was trans. So this is someone who is a female, they transitioned to being a male, and now they are going back to being a female. Thankfully, when she went to schedule her top surgery, the coordinator was out of town, and so she didn't do that. And thankfully, she came to the realization of this is not who I am before she went through with that procedure. So I am so grateful that she did not have the opportunity to do that. First of all, statistically, we are seeing this explosion in transgender identities in young females, in teenage females, at a time when they are so unsure of their bodies, they are so unsure of growth and development that is happening hormonally and emotionally and physically, that they become very insecure with that. And it is easier to not have to deal with it by becoming a male, by taking things like testosterone and not having to deal with periods. And that's a legitimate fear. It's a legitimate discomfort at that age, because it is something that is very uncomfortable to deal with, especially as a teenager and when you're pretty much uncomfortable with everything in your life. And it's interesting in a day and age where we have so much progressivism in women's rights that this person would look at the messaging that is being sent to women across the board and see that we are treated so poorly and that our voices are being stifled by biological male, by people that claim to be feminists, and that we are losing our voice and losing our position in society in a day and age when we should have more credibility and more validation and more visibility than at any other time in history. But this message from the loudest voices, which are coming from the radical left, is that you have women's rights until there is a male involved that wants to be a female, and then that person's voice take precedence over your concerns and your opinion. Or this messaging that if you were born with a uterus, that is somehow a disadvantage for you, and having that uterus and having the responsibility of having to face the consequences of what can happen if you make choices that you could potentially end up pregnant is again another disadvantage. We're seeing ads everywhere of men with makeup on and men in lingerie. I even saw an ad the other day of a man in a wedding dress, and it's just all of these spaces are being taken over by biological males. What message are young women going to get other than I was born lesser than because I'm a woman, and the only way that I am going to be validated and seen as someone worth listening to is if I become a male? And that message is coming from the people that claim to be feminists, that claim to be for women's rights, that claim to care so much more about women's rights than anybody else. Yet again, and as I've said many times, the messages that they are sending is that being a woman, being a biological woman, makes you inferior. It's perfectly fine until a male wants to enter that space, and at that point, your opinions and your concerns are no longer worth listening to. And if you do try to speak up, you are hateful and bigoted. The next one reads, "My health is failing. I am in serious debt. Debt collectors are calling me all the time now for debt related to my transition and also self-harm. I have had to get a lot of stitches. Even if I had the money, almost no doctors will see me. They don't know how to help. They don't have answers, or they just don't like me or want me. I'm so mentally ill that I genuinely thought that the doctors who were transitioning me loved me, on top of the fact that I was a child. I also genuinely thought that I was born in the wrong body, and the testosterone with which I was starving myself all the time was my medicine. I even began to think of my breasts as tumors, and I felt happy when they were cut off because people stopped touching them. I'm in pain all of the time. It's starting to affect my attitude. I hate it. I already have to use constant self-control because of my mental issues and suffering, and now I'm dealing with chronic pain. Sometimes I think about dying. I tried for the first time when I was 15. Lately, I wish I had succeeded. At that point, my body had not been yet touched by the doctors. I was pure, I was whole. My body was still my home. Now it's a painful and decaying reminder of the worst time in my life, and I can't escape." That is obviously so heartbreaking to hear, and I hope and pray that this person is able to find the help that she needs, and that, she finds a support group that can help her, because surprisingly or unsurprisingly, there is this group of people that will push a child to be transgender, that will introduce all of the things that they need to go down this path. They will support them and love them and be their family, at least claim to love them more than their family, as this doctor seemed to give this person the impression that they did. But the second this person changes their mind and decides that this is not the right path for them, the first people to reject them and target them and harass them and invalidate them is the same community that said that they loved them, that said that they cared about them, that said that they truly had their best interests in mind. It puts kids in so much danger mentally, physically, and emotionally emotionally, because now they are at a place where they are recognizing that they had issues that were unaddressed, that they really just needed love and care. Now, not only are they dealing with the repercussions of these decisions, they are dealing with them alone. And in a lot of these cases, unfortunately, what this group has managed to do is poison the mind of this young person and say that their family doesn't love them, their family doesn't care about them, and their family is a danger to them. So there's a good chance that there is a lot of alienation between this person and their family. So they truly have no support system. Not to mention the debt side of it. And this is something that I just kind of explored a little bit more recently, because I have been wondering, how are these young kids affording these surgeries? Because they're not cheap. And we know that insurance companies, at least for the most part, to my understanding, do not cover them. These surgeries can cost anywhere between $100,000 to $150,000. I believe that's for top or bottom surgery. I don't know what these prescriptions cost, but again, all of these things are not cheap, and people are going into debt for them. I honestly do not want to see insurance companies covering these things, and I do not want to see legislation passed where our tax dollars are paying for them, because that is one more barrier to keep people from making a decision that they cannot accept the long-term consequences of. So now, not only are they having to deal with the fact that their body was unnecessarily disfigured and having to face the next 80 years of their life of having to deal with those scars and see those scars, they're also having to deal with the financial aspect of it and having to pay off this debt for something that is causing them so much pain. The hardest part in all of these stories is just the fact that it could have been prevented, that this is so completely unnecessary, and that people that are pushing this know that it's unnecessary. They know that the vast majority of these kids are not making a decision at a time when they are capable of understanding the long-term consequences of it. They know that that lack of maturity is there, that lack of life experience is there. They are being intentionally misleading and intentionally evil with our children. They know this, because the second that these kids decide that this is not what I want, they abandon them, and then there is nobody on the other side in the medical field that is advanced enough in this area to truly be able to help them, because it is uncharted territory. And this last one reads, I am 14 and have a very supportive family. I've been on testosterone for 14 months, but I really think I'm not a trans man. During quarantine, I detransitioned because I wasn't on T or anything, so all I had to do was grow my hair out and start wearing makeup. I was happier then than I am now. The only reason I started medically transitioning after that was was a little pressure from my trans peers and family. I felt like I had to start transitioning again because I was scared of what people would say about me being a girl again. I don't see myself in the mirror anymore, and I cried when my best friend told me she didn't see me any differently than a cis man. I am almost fully aware that I shouldn't be transitioning, but I am so scared about what my trans friends, my family, people who knew me as a kid, etc. will say about it. If I could just move somewhere where no one knows me and start over and go by my old name again, I would. Every day it gets worse. I really want to start somewhere, but I don't know where. I have horrible social anxiety and don't really want to embarrass myself by detransitioning after 4 years of swearing that it's not a phase. So an argument that I hear constantly across the board from trans activists, from people that support this ideology, whether they are directly involved in it or not, that people that truly think that they are fighting for a good cause, is they say that nobody is medically transitioning minors, that this is not happening to people under the age of 18. It is not hard to find the information that it is, but they swear up and down that it isn't. Well, if you listen to this story, she's 14. And she has been transitioning for 4 years, meaning she started when she was 10. And she said she has been on testosterone for 14 months already. So this means that she started when she was, 12, 13 years old. So she's going through all of this pain and suffering and this inner turmoil that never needed to happen. And another argument I hear from so many of these activists is that socially transitioning or changing your name or changing your appearance is not going to have long-term consequences, or going on something like puberty blockers or hormones is not going to have long-term consequences, which is not true at all. But I've made the argument that when somebody makes this commitment at a young age, they socially transition, they change their name, they swear that this is what they want. It gets to this point where, are they going to be brave enough and are they going to feel comfortable enough coming out to all of their friends and saying that this is not what I want? After they have made this commitment, after they have made all of these changes in their life, are they going to feel like that's something that they can do? Are they going to feel stuck like this person does, like this 14-year-old girl does? Because They've insisted to everybody that this is something that they really want to make them happy, and they've convinced everybody to go along with it, and now they don't know how to get out of it. It's just really sad to see this happening at somebody that is only 14 years old, knowing that this person likely has another 80 years on this earth. 14 years is such a short time to be alive, to be in existence, to be a human being. There is no possible way that you can make a decision and know what it is that you want for the rest of your life. And it is just an absolute lie when these kids are told that that what they're doing does not have long-term effects, or that it doesn't have long-term consequences, or that these drugs are reversible, or the hormones are reversible. And it's just not true. Whether they medically transition or not, there are long-term psychological and emotional effects of kids wondering why it is that nobody stopped them, having to deal with the fact that this was preventable and completely unnecessary, and that at one point in their life, they had a perfectly healthy body that did not have to be ruined, that they had emotional issues that could have been dealt with, where they didn't have to go this roundabout way through all of this other trauma to get to a point where they felt good about themselves. There's a lot of people that will say that kids are informed of the long-term consequences of going on things like hormones and testosterone and puberty blockers, but even if you are informed of the side effects, in that moment as a 14, 15-year-old, if you truly feel like this is who you want to be, you're going to think that your happiness is going to outweigh the medical consequences that you have to deal with. If you truly feel like this is what you want, you're going to feel like dealing with the side effects of the drugs or the emotional side effects are just going to be part of this package deal in becoming your true self. And I'm well aware that all of these stories are just a handful that there are out there, and they don't apply to everybody, and that there are people that claim to be happy with being transgender, that they go through this process and they do feel like they found their true selves and they're happy with their decisions. But I think the vast majority of people that get to the point where they can either decide that they're happy or they're not, the vast majority are not, because they did have other things that went unaddressed, that were completely unrelated to their gender identity, and had those things been addressed, they never would have chosen this path in the first place. And when it comes to minors, when it comes to teenagers, I would argue when it comes to anybody under the age of 25, there is no way to know who is going to be happy with it and who is going to have regret. And it is not a chance that we should be willing to take that one of these kids is going to end up on the side of it of regret, because that regret is going to be tied to things that they are likely not going to be able to reverse. Let me know your thoughts on this topic, on these stories. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with others if you think it's worth sharing. Please be sure you are subscribed to my channel. I have seen a lot of new viewers come to my channel. The viewership is going up, but not as many subscribing. So I would love that support. That would mean the world to me. Also hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time I post a video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.